Welcome back to Sport on 7. Very much about tennis tonight as we're in the middle of 2 weeks of tennis action in Dubai. Now, for any tennis fan, David Mercer is a voice you would have heard over the years, a commentator at Wimbledon after 11 years being an umpire at the All England Club. He is here in Dubai for his 18th year working at the Tennis Championships, and I caught up with him to discuss Pete Sampras' eyelashes, Andy Murray, and we look ahead to this week of men's tennis in Dubai. David, a commentator in so many sports, American football, cycling, football, skiing. What was it about tennis that really stuck with you and made you want to do that for your career?
That was always my main sport. That's what I played a lot as a kid. I was a World Junior doubles champion, captain my university team. So tennis was always my primary love. But I played just about every sport there was as a kid. And when I started broadcasting full-time, it was with BBC Radio Sport in London, which was a fabulous grounding because they sent me out to do everything and anything. So I've just about covered every sport from archery to weightlifting and back, but tennis was always the main love.
Tell us about your time as an umpire in tennis, because obviously it may look easy just sitting on that chair above everyone else, but is it a challenge being an umpire?
Yeah, it is. It can be at the lesser tournaments where you don't have a full complement of your line judges and so on. I mean, I'd played one summer of tournament tennis after I graduated to see if I could make it on the tour, and the answer was very evident that I couldn't. So the next best thing, if I couldn't play, I still wanted to be involved. So I was lucky enough to do 11 years at Wimbledon as an umpire. And it was, of course, at the era of the bad boys, the McEnroes and the Connors and the Nastasis, so I had my fair share of run-ins. But, you know, if you love the sport as I do, just to be involved was just fabulous. And I was lucky enough to do the men's singles final at Wimbledon in '84, McEnroe against Connors, and that will obviously always be one of my great memories.
So let's talk about your commentating days. There's been so many matches that you've covered and so many great matches, but is there one that sticks out for you? What's been the greatest match that you have covered?
It's funny, I suppose, because it meant so much to him. It was when Pete Sampras set the new record of Wimbledon titles, playing Pat Rafter in the Wimbledon final. Obviously it was a great thrill to be commentating on the Wimbledon final, and the one incident I can always remember, Pete's parents never watched him play, but we'd heard that they were going to come, but they weren't sitting in the usual place where the players' families normally sit, so we scoured and scoured and scoured to try and find them somewhere in the stands. And I always have a pair of binoculars with me, and I suddenly saw these enormous pair of eyelashes. And if you remember, Pete had these enormous pair of eyelashes, and I said, I think I've got them. And we honed in, and we agreed that had to be them. And so we obviously talked about them. And then what was equally lovely, when Pete won that match, which Rafter really ought to have done, he was up a set and had a great chance in the second set tiebreak. Pete came back and won, and he went and found his mum and dad in the crowd, and it was a very emotional moment, obviously for them and for him, having them there for what was a very special day. So I guess it wasn't necessarily the greatest tennis match I've ever seen, but emotionally it still sort of brings a lump to my throat when I think about it.
Talking of Sampras, I mean, he's who I grew up with, watching the likes of Pete and of course Tim Henman as well at Wimbledon in the 90s there. Is the standard better now, do you think, in tennis?
Yeah, I think every generation gets better, inevitably. Part of that is because of the equipment. I mean, the rackets they play with now compared with when I was a kid, the old wooden rackets, are incredibly different. The strings they use, each generation seems to get fitter, each generation seems to get taller. But I mean, as a kid, my hero was Ken Rosewall, and then it was Rod Laver. And great players would have been great players in whatever generation they were born. I mean, if we could only have, you know, Federer or Djokovic or Nadal up against a team consisting of Laver and Rosewall and Hode and people like that, they would have a fantastic match, because the great players, you know, the Steffi Grafs, the Martina Navratilovas on the women's side against Mo Connolly and people like that, they're all great players. But we're so lucky, particularly in the men's game at the moment, because we have the Fab Four: Djokovic, Nadal, Federer and Murray. And I mean, the semi-finals and final of the Australian Open this year were just sensational tennis. I mean, if you weren't inspired by watching those matches, I mean, you know, you're watching the wrong sport. And for Djokovic, having beaten Murray in almost 5 hours, to then come out and beat Nadal in almost 6 hours from a breakdown in the fifth set, having virtually won the match in the fourth, was a phenomenal achievement.
Let's look ahead to the men's week then. Obviously, Novak did so well at the Australian Open, didn't he? We can't really look past him here in Dubai, can we? Defending champion.
I don't think we can. I mean, he's got to be the favourite. I mean, who knows what will happen over the next week. I mean, in the women's week, sadly, we've had a lot of injuries and illnesses and so on. Something like that could derail him. But if he's fully fit and playing at his best, he's got to be the favourite. But in Federer and Murray and Tsonga and Del Potro and so on, we've got guys who can upset them. And you have to remember this is best of 3-set tennis as opposed to best of 5. So there's more of a chance of an upset. Normally over the full distance, the pedigree will come through. And we always get our share of upsets. But you know, if I had to put my last dirham on somebody to win the men's title, it would have to be Novak, because you sort of wondered after the wonderful year he had last year overall, one of the greatest years ever in the history of the game. Could he do it again? And he showed with those wins, particularly against Murray in the semis and Nadal in the final in Melbourne, that yes, he can. And staggering performance. And he's right up there now with the all-time greats.
Absolutely. Final word ahead of the final week here in Dubai, the men's week coming up. Novak, obviously, he is the clear favourite, but what does it mean for you being here in Dubai in this beautiful surroundings, up in the commentary box there? You have a great time here.
I do. We look forward to it immensely each year. Obviously, it's my 18th year here. I missed a couple of years only, and I've watched this tournament grow. I mean, when I first came here, there was no stadium, there was scaffolding. To get up to our commentary box, you had to climb up 3 vertical ladders and get through very small holes at the top of each of them. And I have no head for heights. And if it was a breezy day, as we had earlier in the week, the commentary box would literally sway in the wind. And to see what Colin McLaughlin and all his team have achieved, where it's now always one of the players' favourite tournaments, it's just been great. And you know, when you get a day like today, and you know back home it's cold and it's miserable, and our golf course was closed when we left because of snow and stuff like that, it breaks up the winter for us. It's a tournament where we get a chance to chat to some of the players over in the player lounge as well. It's more relaxed, obviously, than the majors, where they're a little bit uptight and don't want to be bothered. So it's just perfect, and it's always going to be somewhere very special for me.
David, have a good final week in Dubai, and we look forward to seeing you again next year.
Hope so, inshallah.
Quite a man, isn't he, with so many stories to tell. More from Centre Court in a moment as we chat to the guys ahead of this week's men's championships, and we chat to the winner of the ladies singles as well. But first, if you want to be on Centre Court like the pros in the next few years, this will come in handy.
Hi, my name is Sergio Gaioni, and I'm part of the Tennis 360 tennis team here at the Meydan Tennis Centre. Today we are going to go through a few different strokes, starting with real beginner tips to more advanced tips for kids. Okay? Now we will go through the forehand, starting with beginners. Okay? We're going to get the child, first of all, to make sure that they have the right grip. Not that it's really important, but get the racket out in front, make sure they're just grabbing the racket like they're shaking the racket's hand. Okay? Secondly, what we want to do, we want to break down their swing into 3 parts. Okay? First part is, okay, so we're in the ready position. First part is take the racket back, point the racket to the back fence. The left hand is pointing down the other side of the court if they're right-handed. Okay? They will step across with their left foot, so now the feet are in line. Okay? Step 2, they will take a few little steps forward. Okay? They will balance up. Step 3, they'll swing forward, make contact with the ball, and finish nice and high over their shoulder. What's really important at this stage is that they're basically putting their arm in their mouth. And that's a really good tip to make sure they're finishing over their shoulder. Okay? Another good tip is make sure the heel on their right foot, if they're right-handed, is up. Okay? So it's showing that they're transferring the weight through the shot. So, if I had to demonstrate that, this is the ready position. I'm taking the racket back. I'll drop the ball, come through, finish nice and high. Okay? Bicep in the mouth, my heel's off the ground. Okay? And that's the basic forehand.
Next on Sport on 7, we look ahead to week 2 of the Dubai Tennis Championships, and we also hear from the ladies' winner from Saturday night, and plenty of results and tables to get up to date with, which we'll do next on tonight's edition of Sport on 7.